This is an 8-iron, and it's a dead shank.
Wow.
Way right.
Oh, takes a hop off the path.
You got to be kidding me. Very tough pitch shot right here. You got to hit it into the hill. One hop up and bite, and it's in.
Kind of like that.
Well, let's talk about your victory. So I know you say your career wasn't, great, yada, yada, yada. Hey, you still won at a really high level. You went on the Korn Ferry Tour at the Nike South Carolina Classic. Looking back, what kind of came together that week, and what memories do you sort of have of, winning at a really, really high level of golf?
That was 95 and 91 when I went out there. The year Mr. Hillenbrand started sponsoring me, I hadn't had a lesson in 15 years. I just figured out a way to get it around the course. Kind of knew where the ball was going, but knew how to get it up and in. And I had 2 seconds and 2/3 that year. So I knew I could play at that level. And the guy played quite a bit of golf that year with Tom Lehman, who was the Player of the Year, and he hit it farther than I did, and he was a bit of a grinder. But I felt for the first time in my life like I could make it, like I really truly belonged. I learned a little bit of self-belief that Greg Norman had talked about 3 years earlier in my one little professional stint in Australia. But then I went searching for the elixir and completely lost it. Finished outside the top 100 on the money list the next 3 years, and then 95 rolled around, and I was hitting it just awfully. I remember I had a buddy of mine who worked at the golf course where I played in Phoenix come out. He'd never seen much of the United States, and he just wanted to see the South a little bit. So he came out for a little short stint to caddy for me. And the first 3 weeks we missed the cut badly, and I was hitting it awfully. And then the 4th week we got to this place in Arab, Alabama, Cherokee Ridge Golf Course or something like that. And I ran out of golf balls in the practice round the first day on the 8th hole. And I was not a very fun guy to caddy for. I was maniacal on the course from a behavior standpoint. Not something I'm proud of, but something that anybody who played with me back in the day will tell you. And I was so mad. And I'm like, Patrick, that's it. I'm done. I quit. We're not. I can't afford to fly us home, but we're not playing this week. So we had rented this little hotel, had these apartments, this 2-bedroom apartment. We went to the grocery store, bought God knows how many frozen pizzas and cases of beer, and never left there again until Thursday morning. And I figured, you know what? I paid my entry fee. You're out here. I got to pay you anyway. Let's just go play, and I'm not going to hit a practice ball. I had once worked with a sports psychologist, Dr. Glenn Albaugh, who just published a really cool new book, by the way. And he said, you're just a horrible practicer, so just don't practice. Go chip and putt if you want, but don't practice for like a month. And when I did that in 1993 on the Texas mini tour that I played, I won 3 of 5 events and finished 2nd and 3rd in the other 2, and didn't hit a range ball for a month. So I said, it's so bad, I can't do any worse. So I didn't hit a ball. We went to the first tee that Thursday. I was putting, looking at the hole, the first 9, putting with my eyes closed the second 9. Somehow I made the cut. After all those hours of practice that just proved completely fruitless, I had nothing, and I went out and made the cut. So we were driving over to Florence from Arab, Alabama, and any other state would be called Arab, but not in Alabama. It's Arab. And we were driving to Florence, and I just had this kind of epiphany that's like, you know what? Maybe I could actually do something still in this game. And we went there to Florence. I hit 11 warm-up balls each day, only with a sand wedge, just to stretch out the body. I chipped and putted on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. A fair bit, not a ton, but a fair bit. But I never hit a ball. And I went to the first hole Thursday, and there's a little dogleg left, and I sliced my tee shot into a hazard. Could play it, made par. Second hole's a driver, 4-iron, dogleg left, par 5. And I sliced my tee ball in the hazard. Could play it, and made par. We get to the 3rd hole, and I said, Patrick, looks like we're playing a slice today. And I stuffed a 7-iron next hole, played a slice, shot 70. It was incredible. It was like, I am so bad, and I just shot 70, as opposed to when I'm good and I shoot 78. So we didn't hit any balls the second day, went out and shot 71. And the second day, it was more of a pronounced fade. Third day, it was just kind of a little slight fade. And the 4th day, it was a little baby draw. And I literally was 5 under through 11 holes the 4th day. I was teed off 2 behind Sam Randolph and a bunch of other players that had pretty decent names, Robert Wren, Morris Satowski, Tim Simpson. And I birdied 6 of the first 11 holes on the toughest course we played. It was the toughest ball striking course we played. And the other 5 holes, I missed it inside 10 feet. So I ended up only winning by 1, but I I had no doubt in my golf swing. I knew where the ball was going because I didn't have a swing thought. I just set up, sensed the shot, felt the shot, hit the shot like they try and teach you. And I think there was something so valuable in that to people who are out there looking for the elixir. Go out and see what the golf ball's doing, like Jack Nicklaus always said. See what it's doing on the range and play it. And that's what I did. Of course, I tried the same theory again the next week, but there was a few days of partying in between, and shot 80 the first round.
Well, you got to celebrate it, right? I mean, it doesn't happen every other week. I mean, you think you're allowed to miss the cut after your victory. That makes sense to me. But that's fascinating because, I mean, I'm trying to think of other pros who have, I mean, like I know Duvall said in his heyday he didn't hit a whole lot. If the 7-iron was going straight, he didn't sit in the range and, try to make it worse, right? He went and chipped in putt. Carlos Franco, watched him play an event once where he took like 5 warm-up swings from the parking lot and, put it on the first tee at the John Deere Classic and shot 68 that day. But it's interesting to say that, and I have to kind of follow up of, you don't find too many pros who quote unquote get worse from practice. So was it essentially, what made it worse when you would go and beat balls? Was it just thinking too much or overthinking it? Was this just a way of simplifying it down that you had a good enough golf swing where if you just see golf shot, hit golf shot, there really was no point for you of beating 300 balls a day when you had a swing that was relatively grooved?
That's true. And if you can accept that, that's absolutely the way you should. And if you're good enough to get there, you're good enough to stay there. And if you have to accept that and not be searching for the elixir, but I was always searching for the elixir and tinkering as opposed to practicing with a purpose, working on something, picking random targets out there with each shot, going through a full routine like you're playing in a tournament and making the practice shots matter. I was always tinkering, looking for that one swing thought that would work, reading that next article, getting the one instructor down on the end of the range who had a couple minutes to come give me that instant cure, and being completely lost at times where I hit it so poorly that it was absolutely embarrassing. But there were times when I wasn't working on my swing where I didn't have the best stuff going. But you knew where it was going. You knew you could play it, and you found it, and you hit it again, and you knew on a hole that might have had a lot of trouble here or there how to get it to one point or another. It might not have been pretty, but you could do it. And I think there's a huge lesson there that so many people go out and they do one thing. They go to the range, they hit balls, they tinker with their swing, they look for that elixir, they try that swing thought that Paul Azinger said or Johnny Miller said on TV or Nick Faldo, and they end up just playing awfully because they don't trust what got them there, their instinctive natural swing. And you go out, you hit a few balls, whatever that ball's doing, you go play it, and you're always going to have a pretty good idea where that golf ball's going. It may not be the way you want to play or the way you dream of playing, but you're going to know where it's going. And in the process, you're not going to neglect hitting a few putts before you play or hitting a few chip shots and getting a little sharper there. I was playing with like I told you, my son yesterday, and he loves golf. He's 23, probably about a 12 to 15 handicap. And he's just been putting awfully. And I said, why is that? Because he got new clubs about 6 months ago, new driver. He got the new Cobra driver and 3-wood that he loves, and he just beats him, and he pounds the ball. And I said, every time from now on, before you go out and play, I want you to stand on the putting green until you make 10 5-footers. They don't have to be in a row, but you have to make 10 5-footers. And just get a little in tune with the touch that it takes to get the ball close to the hole, in the hole. And once he starts grinding on that, you'll be amazed. Stand on the putting green until you make 10 5-footers. It's not hard. And then go to the first tee. And you're gonna shoot a lower score than you would have otherwise. I can promise you that.
Very interesting, and I think there's definitely some truth in that. Golf Channel, you've been associated with the Golf Channel for so long now. How did you get started with them? And then as a follow-up, how did your career path go from where you are, where you started and where you're at today doing a lot of the LPGA work?
95 was the first year they came into existence. I was excited about the thought of the Golf Channel. I knew it wouldn't work. Nobody thought it would work. A pay-per-view, it was $7 a month pay channel when it first started. But the second tournament they produced was a Nike tour, Korn Ferry Tour event. And I remember I went over and I met the guy in charge, this guy named Keith Hirschland. And I said, I just want you to know I'm a fan. I hope you guys make it. This is really cool. I said, if there's anything I can ever do to help, let me know. And as it turns out, the name Hirschland kind of rang a bell. And I said, you from Reno, Nevada? And he said, yeah. I said, I played junior golf against your brother. I said, matter of fact, you were our chaperone one time at a junior tournament, a statewide or a national junior tournament that sent state teams to it. It was called the Eddie Hogan's Cup up in Portland. And our state director couldn't make it, so he sent Keith Hirschman, who was like 24 years old at the time, to chaperone us. We never saw him. I think Keith was having a good time. But so we had a little bit of an introduction, and he said, yeah, whatever, great, good luck to you and all that. And then it was during the Pro-Am the next week, because I played well that week. I got a little bit of TV time back when they were in 40,000 homes and nobody could have seen you. But the next week in the Pro-Am, he came around in a cart and he said, hey, he goes, you play early tomorrow. We're on the air late. He said, you mentioned helping us. Would you mind coming to the TV compound? We're going to put you to work. And I'm like, sure, that sounds cool. I thought, of course, he's giving me a microphone and going to make me a star. Well, he sat me in the production truck in front of this wall of little tiny TV monitors. Back then they were tiny. Now they're big flat screens, but they were tiny little monitors. And I sat between this massive guy named Carl Schlickspear, big old college football player. It simply goes by the name Big Man. And then a guy who was a smaller guy who came from ESPN named Peter Esposito. And I sat between them, and their job was to identify who the players were, but they didn't know them, and none of the volunteers knew them to radio them in. So my job was anytime they pointed a monitor to identify the player. Now, typically that's a down the line shot and you're seeing a guy's butt. So you don't really know all the time, but you could tell by their mannerisms. And I identified most of them. At the end of the day, he gave me a slip to fill out and give my social security number, and they paid me $50. And I'm like, no, you take that and you know where to put it. I go, that was fun. I'll do this every time I can. Anything to help you guys. I want you to succeed. And I think it's really kind of cool and fun, actually. Lo and behold, a couple weeks it was the very next week, they sent me around as a guest commentator. I had a headset but no microphone, so I got to chime in every once in a while with their on-course commentator, and he was an English guy named Gary Smith, and I made fun of him, and they liked it, and I hung out with the crew. And then it was middle of that summer, they were short one commentator, and he said, you want to give it a try for a week? And I said, absolutely. And he ended up becoming my best friend, and he's now retired from TV production. His wife is the CEO of the USOC, the United States Olympic Committee. So he's living out in Colorado Springs and enjoying retirement, writing books. But he became my best friend, my boss, my mentor, and the guy I owe basically my career to. And that's how it started. And it just kept progressing. He always said, just keep your head down. Less is more. Don't talk when the player and caddy are talking. And anytime I messed up, he let me know in no uncertain terms and made me better and made all the guys he trained better. Frank Nobilo learned under him. Kurt Byram learned under him. Kay Cockrell learned under him. All people with pretty long careers from a broadcasting standpoint. So he did something right. And you keep your head down. You don't make any noise. And if you do a good job, then the fans like you more important than anything. If they think you're credible and they like what you have to say, then you keep getting re-signed. It's kind of a neat thing. Then I ended up doing a lot of play-by-play for the Korn Ferry Tour and some PGA Tour events. And then my new boss by that time, a guy named Jack Graham, who's become a tremendous friend as well. He came to me one day while I was doing play-by-play at a PGA Tour event up in New York at the Turning Stone. And he sat me down at the bar and he said, I got an idea. He goes, I need a male voice for my lead commentator on the LPGA. And he went through the whole scenario, and you'll be our number one on-course guy out there. You're really good at on-course, he said. And I don't think you have that much future as a play-by-play person, so give it some thought. And he goes, what's your answer? I said, well, I come from the school when your boss tells you you're doing something, you don't have an answer. You just say yes. So I said, I'm not happy about it, but I'll do it. And I've told this story a million times. Mike Wan loves it, the commissioner of the LPGA Tour. But the second event I did that next year when I became their on-course guy for LPGA, the second event I did, I got so enamored with how well the women played. But, I watched in the past, but I wasn't really a big fan. And I got so impressed with how they managed their games. And Sandra Gall was going up. We were at City of Industry. Sandra Gall was going up against Jie Shin, who was number 2 or 3 in the world, just removed from her dominant number 1 status. And it was David versus Goliath. Sandra Gall had a decent little amateur career at the University of Florida, but was supposed to be a star on the LPGA. And she was going up against her in the final group. And I went out to that first hole, even though we weren't on the air for 2.5 hours. And I watched them tee off, and I couldn't stop. There was a sea of people out there watching them. And I walked along the entire way and had to phone into the TV compound and said, hey, when we come on the air, bring me my gear. I'm staying out here. I'm watching this. And Sandra Gall won that day. beat BGA Shin, I think, on the first playoff hole. And it was just the most amazing thing. And I called my boss that night. It was midnight Eastern time. And I said, hey, just so you know, my next contract is going to have LPGA in it. You're never taking me away from this product ever. And that's the way it's been. I absolutely love it out there. They are incredible athletes, incredible people, so approachable, so great to the gallery, and they're starting to get their due from the publicity and from a recognition standpoint. Thank goodness.
What's the biggest misconception you think golf fans in general might have about the LPGA?
Well, there's a lot of politically incorrect ones that you hear from time to time, none of which are true. That really don't deserve the forum to talk about.
Less like
from a talent standpoint, from a talent standpoint, you hear it. You hear the men pro say. There's a recent interview with Jeff Ogilvy who said it. He goes, "They are so good. They are so good. They're playing. They're women are playing golf the same way men are playing golf. They just have to do it so differently because they don't have the physical power." He said in some ways they're better than the men. In a lot of ways they're better than the men because they have to be so precise. They have to extract a score out of that golf course as opposed to pummeling it to death. And almost every male pro who's familiar with LPGA will tell the amateur golfer of any skill level really, but the amateur golfer to go watch an LPGA event if you want to learn to play better, if you want to learn to score better, because you're not going to hit a 7-iron 220 yards like Dustin Johnson. You're not going to hit some of the drives Brooks Koepka hits, but you can certainly learn how to manage your game the way they manage their games, on and around the greens, into the greens, from the tee, picking a side of the fairway. I don't know if there is a misperception in that regard, but I don't think there's the appreciation there should be for how great they play the game and the scores they shoot from the positions they shoot where most of the men wouldn't come close to that type of score. It's just astounding how good they are from a precision standpoint.
Are they as good as the men from, say, 125, 130 and in?
Well, most are, yeah. But see, now 125, 130 and in, a lot of them are hitting 9-iron, and men are hitting gap wedges and sand wedges. So it's a different, it's still apples and oranges. But when you put the wedges in their hands versus the men's wedges from appropriate distances, any iron for that matter, I say they're better. I say absolutely they're better because they have to be. They absolutely have to be.
It's interesting when I do club fittings here at the shop for sub 70, how many times we go and, the guys will be fit and will have questions on, a male pro's golf bags and how they're set up. And I go, let's think about it, more from how the LPGA players have their bags set up, right? Let's look at some more high lofted fairway woods, replace some mid irons with some hybrids, because you're more in the swing speed of how they do it, and they're doing it for a living, right? I use that example all the time of trying to maximize your game out based on how the LPGA players have their bags set up. And of course, this amateur player is not even close to as good as those women are on that tour or even Symetra tour. But the concept behind it is the men are such freaks of nature, athletic-wise, distance-wise, it's not really obtainable. But if we can kind of manage our games more like a professional golfer from the Symetra Tour, LPGA Tour, I think a lot of golfers could get a hell of a lot more out of that bag setup than, looking at what the men do.
There are very few LPGA bags with an iron stronger than a 5. There's a few 4-irons out there, and I think Daniel Kang's the only one with a 3-iron. Maybe Lexi has a 3-iron every now and then. And there are a number of them. I remember covering G.A. Shin at Kingsmill, her last win before she basically retired and just started playing in Japan. Her longest iron was a 7-iron, and that's not all that uncommon. And, you're out there, and they're 156 yards away, and you see a head cover come off, and you're like, wow, she doesn't have much power. And then you look ahead to a tucked left front pin, and the ball's 5 feet away, and you're like, well, you know what? There might be something to that. Mm-hmm. I think every amateur golfer needs one, probably 2, and wouldn't be bad with 3 or 4 hybrids in their bag because they're easier to hit. They're more predictable. The mishits are far more forgiving than an iron, and the way today's irons are manufactured with the jacked up lofts, a 5-iron from today, a modern 5-iron is about a 3.5 iron from when you and I grew up. And you don't need anything stronger than that. You're not, you know what? I don't care how good you are, how much you play. You're probably not good enough to hit a 4-iron solidly every time. Whereas if you hit a 4 hybrid, you don't have to hit it all that solidly to get a decent result. And if you do hit it solidly, you're going to get every bit as good a result.
Preaching to the choir on that one. I go all the way up to a 6 hybrid in my bag, and I mean, I'm better with it. There's no question. I am better with a 6 hybrid than a 6 iron day in, day out. You know, taking your ego out of it.
They're easier out of the rough. They're easier off tight lies. Everything about them's easier to hit.
1,000%. I was going to ask you on Michelle Wie. You know, you've covered the LPGA a long time. It's all the talent in the world, injury after injury. Do you think there's still, I mean, she's young enough. Is there still enough in that tank to kind of come back and be an elite player, in your opinion?
Frankly, no. She has the talent to, absolutely. She's in a different phase of her life now, just recently married and now just announced they're expecting a baby girl, her and Johnny West. But she did also say in that same interview, she feels like there's some unfinished business there. So if she has that inner drive to go out and do it and put in the time and pay the price to do it, then I think she could become a contender again. I don't know if she'll ever be the dominant one that she could have been had she not tinkered, had she not toyed with the swing, had she not looked like so many other players for the secret. She'll never have that authentic swing she had when she nearly made the cut as a 12 or 14-year-old in Hawaii.
Yeah, something nuts like that. Yeah, the man.
That swing was so ridiculously perfect. And but if I think this time away to maybe forget about all those demons that kind of, reared their way into her head through the years from a ball striking standpoint and putting standpoint, to maybe forget about them and maybe have a chance to literally get a little bit back more to your authentic, to your natural to the swing that you can trust, that you can sense where the ball's going. I'm not going to count her out. She's way too talented. I'm not going to count her out. But I just don't. That's to be a new bride, to be a new mom, to have a whole new way of life, to be now basically removed from the one staple she had in her life, which were Bo and BJ, her parents, to living in a normal adult life. She's always been an extremely well-adjusted young lady for someone who grew up in a fishbowl. But to be able to pay that price that it takes to get back to that level, that's asking a lot when she has a very nice, comfortable, great life ahead of her as a mom and as a former star, and probably more than likely is going to be a standout TV announcer.
I was going to ask you about another golf swing, and I was doing my research for this, and I've forgotten you had that association with natural golf, and then Bryson kind of comes on the scene with a lot of those principles. Do you think that system was a little bit ahead of its curve, and your ideas or your thoughts on Bryson's golf swing, and what about that motion did you find appealing to work with a company that was kind of promoting that single plane swing and trying to simplify it down a little bit?
Yeah, it wasn't so much a single plane swing; it was a single axis swing. The hands, if you stand down the line from behind a player, looking at the target and the ball between them. The angle from the club head to the shoulders was one straight line of arms and shaft, and he does that. He does it closer than anybody. Almost everybody with a full swing with a longer club, even when they start with the angle between the arms and the shaft, the low-hanging hands, they return to the ball from a single axis position. So I love the theory of eliminating basically one lever, not a lever in the swing because you don't lose any power. He's proven that. But eliminating one variable in the swing that you don't need, a timing aspect. And that's the part I love. It was modeled after Mo Norman, no matter what the founders of it originally said. Jack Kirkendall was the original founder, and then a guy named Andrew, I can't remember the last name, bought the company. And they said they had this theory, and then they found Mo Norman, and he seemed to fit the theory. That's all BS. It was all modeled after Mo Norman. But I think there were a lot of things I never understood that are conventional musts in the golf swing that never made logical sense to me. One of them is a 9-finger or 8-finger golf swing, be it an overlap or interlock or golf grip. I never understood why we do that, and I haven't talked to a single teacher in all my time who's made me say, you know what, you're right, and I'm wrong. I think if you have 10 fingers, every time you take somebody with a 9 or 8-finger grip and you have them go hit chip shots and maybe a few bunker shots with a 10-finger grip, the first thing they're going to say is, man, I feel like I have so much more control of the club, because you do, quite honestly. And I don't think Bryson has a 10-finger grip, but he does have the fat grips to hold it a little more in your hands instead of your fingers. Once again, eliminating a variable and not, in my opinion, not costing you power. That part I get in arguments with conventional instructors all the time about. I don't think it costs you power to grip the club a little more in your hands and a little less in your fingers. I think it gives you more control because you grip everything else in your hand. Every other sport you play, where you hold something and hit a ball with it in your hand, you're holding it in your hands and not your fingers. So I like that. I like the single axis. I loved the body position at impact that natural golf taught. Bryson doesn't do it, but that is basically trying to stay as square to the ball at impact with your body as you can, as opposed to turning out, because you can watch player at long hitter after long hitter, and every single one to a person does it right at impact or just the instant after impact. Their hips stop turning, and a lot of them, like Rory McIlroy, Lexi Thompson, a lot of the longer hitters, their hips actually counter rotate a couple degrees right through impact. And that is a lesson that one of my teachers taught me growing up at Las Vegas Muni, that and it goes back to just running in the street in the play yard or on ice skates playing crack the whip. And all these kids hold hands and they go running down a line, and the guy on the inside stops and the guy on the outside goes flying around, usually ends up with some scabs at the end, but goes flying around at a speed that you couldn't generate on your own. And I think much the same with the golf swing. It's when that core stops, when the inside of that crack the lick stops, it allows the outside to travel the fastest. And that's what I think was one of the secrets to the power you generated if you use those natural golf fundamentals at the time.
If you're going to go 10-finger grip, do you need to have a bigger grip than kind of a standard industry golf grip, in your opinion? Does that make that 10-finger grip easier?
It makes the transition easier, yes. And my grips are, I've gone down a little bit. They were Bryson size, but they're still the jumbo. They're almost the arthritic grips that you would buy at the store. And yeah, I can't play without them. If you first try it and you're going to be stubborn and not hit chip shots first and just go out there and try and 10-finger grip, you better put a much larger grip on there. You're just going to see the golf ball going so much further left than it did before, because it really does. It adds power and it adds club head speed, and it's going to hook, and it's always going to hook, or it's going to go more left than what you would normally hit it. Put it that way. Yeah.
Right. So you have to have a bigger grip to kind of balance that out, for lack of a better word. Yeah. Makes sense. Interesting. It's I always thought there was some. It can simplify a very difficult process down, and I think that's kind of what those systems, as you've kind of stated, kind of can help golfers with. So it's always an interesting question of the debate back and forth on that one. Got a couple extra here for you, some quick hitters, and we'll get you out of here. Thanks again for your time today. I really appreciate it. 2 or 3 best golf courses you've ever gotten to play in your life, and what makes them so great architecturally? The most architectural gem I ever played was in Perth, Australia. Still to this day, my favorite city in the entire universe. It was called Joondalup. It was a Trent Jones senior course built out of a rock quarry, long before Streamsong came along and the phosphate mine here in Florida. But it was built out of a rock quarry, and it was an absolute architectural masterpiece. I mean, it was incredible. Remember almost every hole. It looked like one of those cartoons I used to have when we were kids, and you're hitting from on top of a mountain to a cloud, just massive cliffs, right behind a green rock wall. It was really something. And you can't, I got to play the AT&T twice, as a qualifier back in the few events I did play on the PGA Tour. You can't discount the natural beauty of Pebble Beach and the subtlety of even the holes that are much less dramatic, that people say, holes 11 through 16 are just blah, and holes 1 through 5 are just blah. They're not. There's a lot of subtlety to them that I think can be appreciated. Riviera is just probably one of the best courses on the face of the earth. And then I just got to cover and get reintroduced to Royal Melbourne when I was down there for the President's Cup. And it was the anti-Pete Dye. It is such a brilliant design that it will always stand the test of time. And it was the anti-Pete Dye in that it looked so unintimidating, but it is so brutal. It is absolutely so brutal to try and post a score on that course. And when you look at it and you walk around it, it's like, this is nothing. But then you see the little rolls of ball stakes here and there, and they're not unfair. It's completely fair. But you have to be so extremely precise and control trajectory, control spin, control the angle at which the ball lands on the green, and all those things is just absolutely amazing. And
And I mean, it's rugged looking. And it's meant to be. That's the way golf is on a links style course. But it is an absolute masterpiece.
Is there one or two still on your hit list that you want to go out and play and see that you haven't been able to yet?
I'd like to see Sand Hills out in Nebraska. Obviously,
so good.
Yeah,
good.
You've played it, have you?
Yeah, I'm a member at Dismal River, which is right next to it. So I'm crazy enough to drive the 11 hours 5 times a year to go play in that region because it's. I went out there once and I was blown away. It's just Sand Hills is my favorite golf course in the world, but that whole region of Prairie Club, Dismal River, Sand Hills, it is just incredible from an experience, from the golf, from the whole 9 yards. It's unlike anything you've ever seen.
Yeah, I'd like to see Cabot Links. I'd like to play there. I haven't played Bandon Dunes, but I feel like I have because I read so much about it and I hear so much about it. But I would like to get out there for a 2-week trip and play every one of those someday. Cabot Links, of course, up in Nova Scotia, out on the cliffs, eastern Canada. Obviously, you like to play Augusta. I worked it for 4 or 5 years for the CBS online coverage, 15, 16, and walked it quite a bit. Never played it. Kind of like to play that, but again, it's not one I feel I need to play because you feel like you have played it just by watching it so much over the years. But those are the main. There's one up in Central Oregon now where they have Goats Caddy for you. It's kind of like a golf destination place. I can't remember the name of it, but it looks like a tremendous. It was a David McClay Kid course as well, and it looks tremendous. Back when he was designing, because he designed great courses, starting with Bandon Dunes. Then he kind of went, and he admits that he went too far on a lot of courses. Then he came back to his background and started building great courses again. And this one looks like a great course. I can't remember the name of it.
Pine Valley. Have you ever been out there to play?
Have not. No.
I've heard that. Me either. No. That one's supposed to just be, there's a reason it's number 1 in the world all the time from an architectural standpoint. It's supposed to be great. So, yeah, there's so many good ones out there, and I love the direction it's going with sort of bringing width back to the tee and angles and like kind of what you were talking about with Royal Melbourne. I hope that trend line and golf course architecture, kind of what Core Crenshaw brought in the mid-'90s with Sand Hills, kind of continues. I think it's such a more interesting way to play golf.
I do
too. President's Cups showed that, right? Well, how can this hole be that hard for those skill levels and its angles and its wind? I mean, the course can change every day. I love watching them have to kind of not just bomb, hit it to the middle of the green. It's angles and variety and different shots every day. I love that style of old school architecture, which hopefully that the trend line continues with that, because I think it's a wonderful way to play golf, and all skill sets can play it a little bit too, right? Those courses allow for a 15 handicap to kind of run something up there, at least to get on the green and have a chance at a par versus forced carries and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And there's one that's reasonable and quite affordable, and every golfer in the world would have access to it, called Seaview outside Atlantic City in Galloway Township, where the LPGA plays their ShopRite every year. I mean, it might tip out at 6,000 yards, maybe 6,000 yards, and you hit in 18 holes. You hit every club in your bag, and you hit it with sheer terror in your heart. It is just a masterpiece. Best course they play, and it is old school golf, and it is just flat out awesome.
Well, and the last one I have for you here, the PGA show is coming up. I'll be down there. Is there a couple good golf courses in the Orlando area that if we're traveling down there, we should check out of some good architecture and some good golf down there?
Yeah, if you like subtlety, my favorite one is Grand Lakes, the Ritz course, where they just played the father-son every year. That's a Greg Norman design, and it's not Royal Melbourne because it's way too plush for it. But if you like subtlety in a design and not the Fazio dye type dramatics in a design, you'll absolutely love just the subtlety in and around the greens and getting it in the right spot off the tee. Dead flat as a pancake. All of Central Florida is. But it is that's my favorite. Grand Cypress, they went a little over the deep end when Jack came in and redid the greens and made it a little bit of goofy golf. But from a tee to green standpoint, a great design. If you get a chance to get on Isleworth, it's kind of like you have to see it once, but you never really want to go back because it's just too hard and the bunkers are way too penalizing. Lake Nona is a good, solid golf course. But I like Grand Lakes is the best, and that is one you can get on without knowing a member. It's a high-end daily fee course, but a great golf course. Yeah.
Have you played the Winter Park golf course since the redo?
Winter Park 9. I've lived here 17 years, and I hadn't played it till about 3 weeks ago. My son lives out there because that's where he goes to school at UCF, and he plays it all the time, and he talked me into coming out there, and I can't get there often enough now. It's just an absolute blast.
Yeah, I heard it's just great, and it just makes sense. It's fun golf from what I've heard. Like, you can then walk and grab a beer and a sandwich afterwards. Like, it just old school meets new school in the sense of it's not just about the golf, it's also about the experience a little bit there too with that beautiful little town.
Tiny little clubhouse. You walk up, you pay your greens fee, you go to the first tee, you wait till there's an opening, you play with 3 strangers. You might be playing with a captain of industry or a guy who's fighting for his last two pennies. But and almost every par 4 is drivable for a big hitter. But you can hit it. A beginner can go out there and enjoy it and not get in anybody's way. And you walk, it's flat, it's easy. It's an hour, 45 minutes. And you go in and they have a guy grilling out burgers and hot dogs, and you have a beer, and you call it a day. And it's really the way people should be introduced to golf. Actually, it's fantastic.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate all the insights. It's been a pleasure from my side having you on. So thank you, and best of luck with everything you're doing in 2020. And we'll look forward to watching you on the Golf Channel.
Thanks, Jason. I really enjoyed it. I love talking golf. Obviously, passionate about it. So thanks so much. Great questions too. I enjoyed it.